The dormitory was silent at 2:17 a.m., silent except for the faint squeak of a floorboard that shouldn't have moved. Sarah's eyes snapped open. At first, she thought it was the wind, or maybe the pipes, but then she heard it. A low, drawn-out scream echoing from the third floor. Not a student's scream. Something older, something hollow. She clutched the blanket to her chest, heart hammering. The hallway beyond her door was dark, a single flickering light barely illuminating the peeling walls. Shadows pooled in the corners, thick and unnatural, shifting just as she blinked. Her phone buzzed. A message from her roommate. "Did you hear that?" Sarah's fingers trembled as she typed back. I don't know. It's probably nothing." But the metallic scent in the air told her it wasn't nothing. Then came the whisper. Faint, almost casual. "Sarah." Her blood ran cold. The voice wasn't coming from a room, a vent, or the hallway. It was inside her head. A door at the far end of the corridor slammed violently. She froze. Something moved just beyond the flickering light, a shadow that shouldn't have existed. And then it stopped. She held her breath. The dormitory exhaled, and in the silence that followed, Sarah knew one thing. She wasn't alone, and whatever was here had been waiting. Sarah had never seen a building like the dormitory she now called home. From the outside, it looked deceptively normal. A brick structure with ivy crawling up the corners, its windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. But as she stepped inside, the charm evaporated. The air was heavy, stale, carrying the faint, persistent scent of damp wood and something else she couldn't identify. Dust motes floated in shafts of light, disturbed by the faint creak of the ancient floorboards. She lugged her bag down the narrow hallway, each step echoing louder than it should have. Room numbers were painted neatly on doors, but some were scratched, worn, the numbers barely legible. The peeling paint on the walls revealed layers of color beneath, as if the dorm had aged in secret, hiding its past under each coat. "First year?" a voice asked. Sarah turned sharply. A tall, lanky senior stood in the corner, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Watch the third floor. Some rooms, they remember you." His words were low, almost a warning whispered into the air, but he smiled faintly and walked away before she could ask what he meant. Sarah forced herself to breathe. It was just a senior trying to be mysterious. She carried on, unpacking her things in the small, cramped room that would be hers for the year. Her roommate Lila had already claimed the top bunk. Lila's hair was dyed a violent shade of red, and her voice carried a nervous energy. "Hey, watch out for the lockers near the stairwell." "They slam on their own sometimes," she said, rolling her eyes. The first night was uneventful, or so it seemed. Sarah lay in bed, listening to the dorm creak and groan, trying to ignore the occasional whispers that seemed to drift through the hallway. But then she noticed the mirror across from her bed. Her reflection didn't quite move with her. For a moment she froze, staring. Her reflection blinked, but she hadn't. A sudden thump made her jump. The calendar on the wall had turned a page on its own. Sarah's pulse quickened. She told herself it was the wind, the building settling. But as she reached for her phone, she saw a note slipped under the door. In jagged handwriting it read, "You shouldn't have come here." Her hands shook. The room felt colder now, shadows stretching along the walls like dark fingers. The whispers grew louder, almost teasing, just beyond comprehension. She glanced at the door as if expecting it to move. A faint creak confirmed her fear. Something had shifted in the hallway. The night deepened. Outside, the campus was silent. Inside, the dormitory seemed alive, breathing softly through the cracks in the floorboards. Sarah hugged her blanket tightly. Every instinct screamed that she was not alone. Somewhere in the distance, a floorboard squeaked again. Then another, and another. The dormitory had begun its watch, and Sarah had just become its newest subject. The next morning, Sarah woke with a dull ache behind her eyes. The dormitory seemed calmer in daylight, but the shadows she'd glimpsed last night felt like they lingered in the corners, refusing to vanish. She told herself it was paranoia, the kind that comes from moving into a strange place. During breakfast, she overheard other students whispering. "Did you hear screams last night?" one asked. "Yeah," another replied. "Third floor again." "Again?" Sarah thought. Her pulse quickened. What did they mean by again? Back in her room, she tried to to shake off the unease, arranging her things methodically. The mirror still reflected her mostly, but sometimes, just at the edge of her vision, movement flickered that didn't belong to her. Later, she heard footsteps outside her door. A pause, then a soft whisper, "Sarah." She jumped, grabbing her phone, but there was nothing, no one. Just the lingering metallic scent in the air that clung to her like a warning. By the third night, Sarah could no longer dismiss the strange events. She cornered a senior named Marcus in the hallway. His eyes flicked nervously toward the ceiling. "They don't like new faces," he said quietly. "Who?" she asked. "The floors," he muttered. "The dormitory. It has a memory. People say it eats the careless." Sarah frowned. "Memory? Eats?" Marcus leaned closer. "Students disappear. Some just vanish. Others are never the same. They whisper things they shouldn't know. You'll see." Later, in the library, Sarah found old student newspapers and diaries detailing incidents over decades. A fire had gutted part of the dorm 50 years ago. Survivors described shadows that whispered, doors that opened by themselves, and corridors that moved. Some students reported seeing their own reflections speak back to them. The dormitory wasn't just old. It was alive and hungry. The following nights were worse. Sarah began documenting everything, thinking logic could save her. But the dormitory defied logic. A locker slammed shut beside her. Though she hadn't touched it, she awoke to faint scratching noises under the floorboards. Directly beneath her bed, mirrors reflected figures she did not recognize. Standing silently behind her when she turned, notes appeared in her bag. "They are watching. Don't sleep." One night she spoke to her roommate Lila in desperation. I can't stay here," Lila shivered. "I warned you. Third floor. They wait for the curious ones." A sudden knock at Sarah's door froze her in place. She opened it. No one there, only a faint trail of blackened footprints leading down the hallway. She traced them, but they disappeared mid-step, as though swallowed by the dormitory itself. Sleep became a distant memory. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw shadowed faces staring at her from the ceiling, from inside lockers, even in the air itself. She whispered to herself, "I'm losing it. This isn't real," but the signs were undeniable. Her reflection once blinked, while she hadn't, whispering. Voices called her name when she was alone in the shower. A door swung open to reveal a hallway she didn't recognize. She began recording video of the dormitory at night. On playback, shadows darted across corridors she had checked herself. Her own voice whispered in the recordings, except she hadn't said anything. One night, she met a janitor in the dim basement corridor. His face was pale, his hands trembling. You see them too?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes, what are they?" Sarah stammered. He shook his head violently. "Dorm remembers, consumes, don't trust the silence, don't trust the calm. Once it notices you, it waits. Always waits. Why me?" He swallowed hard. "It doesn't choose. It tests. Some break, some vanish, some stay." Sarah left him shivering in the dark, her stomach twisting. The dormitory wasn't just a place. It was a predator, and she had just walked into its hunting grounds. By week 2, the dormitory's malevolence became physical. Doors slammed shut as she approached, staircases shifted, and hallways seemed longer at night than in the day. A room she had walked past countless times revealed a door she had never noticed, slightly ajar, inviting her. Inside, the air was colder. A mirror hung crookedly on the wall, reflecting a room that should have been empty. And in it, she saw herself, but her expression was wrong, twisted with fear she didn't yet feel. She screamed, but no sound came out. The door closed behind her with a soft click, sealing her alone in the darkness. Sarah began hearing whispers constantly, not just at night, but in the hallways, in her room, even when she left the dormitory for classes. They weren't random. They called her by name, spoke of things she had never told anyone. "Sarah, you can't leave. Not yet. Look behind you. Remember the fire. Remember what you ignored." The whispers drove her to check old records. She discovered accounts of students who had vanished without a trace, often after the same sequence of events: curiosity, isolation, sleep deprivation, reflection distortions. The dormitory's history was repeating itself. Sarah's paranoia peaked. She avoided mirrors, hid her phone to prevent recordings of her own hallucinations, and slept in the hallway to feel less trapped. Still, the dormitory found her. whisper, "You belong here." The walls of her room stretched and warped, her furniture shifting just enough to disorient her. She ran into the hallway, only to find that her room was gone, replaced by a narrow corridor that led to the third floor, where screams echoed continuously. She tried to tell herself it was a dream. She told herself the dormitory was old, the noises were normal. But then the walls breathed, the shadows lunged, and her own reflection mouthed words she did not know. Her mind fractured. She questioned everything: friends, reality, herself. Every familiar face in the dormitory now seemed alien, as if it had been replaced by something else, something that knew her fears better than she did. By the end of the conflict development, Sarah understood the truth. The dormitory didn't just house students. It observed them, remembered them, and ultimately consumed those who ignored the warnings. Each small event, the whisper, the shadow, the moving object, was not random. It was testing her, breaking her down, and feeding her fear. The whispers grew louder, shadows thicker, hallways longer, mirrors twisted. Sleep was impossible. Friends avoided the third floor, leaving Sarah alone. And the dormitory waited patiently for her next mistake. Her fate was no longer in her hands. She had become a player in a cycle that had lasted decades, one that the dormitory would continue until she was either broken or absorbed completely. The third floor was always forbidden. Marcus had warned her. Lila had avoided it. But Sarah had no choice. The dormitory had made its intentions clear. Shadows shifted in the corners of her vision, whispering her name, pulling her toward the staircase that led upward. She ascended slowly, each step creaking beneath her weight, echoing into the darkness. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. Doors that had been closed all semester now hung open, revealing darkness deeper than the room itself. A faint voice whispered from the end of the corridor, "Sarah." It was her own voice. She froze, but the sound was coming from the shadows themselves. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing slightly, as if alive. She stepped forward anyway, drawn by a mixture of fear and compulsion she couldn't resist. The moment Sarah reached the middle of the floor, the dormitory changed. The hallways warped, ceilings stretching impossibly high, doors moving to different places. Mirrors reflected rooms she had never seen, corridors looping impossibly, trapping her in a maze that defied logic. She tried the nearest door. It was locked. Another door opened to reveal a room that looked like her own. But she wasn't there. A faint scratching came from beneath the floor. The whispering voices multiplied, overlapping, calling names she didn't know. Threatening, laughing, pleading. "You can't leave. Not now." Her heart raced. Panic clawed at her chest. She ran, trying to find the staircase back down, but each turn brought her to the same hallway. The dormitory had trapped her, feeding on her fear. The shadows began to solidify, dark shapes slithering along walls and ceilings, moving toward her. They took twisted forms, classmates she had known, seniors who had vanished, faces that looked almost human but were wrong, distorted, grinning in impossible ways. She screamed, backing into a wall, but the shadows followed, stretching impossibly, flowing over the floor like liquid darkness. One figure emerged, a reflection of herself, eyes hollow, mouth twisted in a silent scream. The reflection whispered, "You've been expected." Sarah ran through the hallway, doors slamming behind her, the floorboards shifting beneath her feet. Each step brought the shadows closer, whispering her name, revealing secrets she had never told anyone. She realized the dormitory remembered. Every fear, every mistake, every lonely moment, it remembered all of them. Sarah's mind fractured completely. Time warped. Minutes felt like hours, seconds like eternity. She saw herself in multiple places at once, mirrored, fractured. Her friends appeared, pleading for her to stop. But when she reached them, they dissolved into smoke, replaced by shadows grinning at her. A door opened and she stepped inside, hoping to hide, but the room itself was wrong. The ceiling was too low, walls too narrow, floorboards slanted in impossible angles, mirrors lined the walls, reflecting her from every possible angle. And in each reflection, she saw her fear amplified, her terror consuming her face, her body twisting unnaturally. The whispers became louder, almost unbearable. Stay. Forever. You belong. She clawed at the walls, trying to escape, but the walls pulsed like flesh, closing in on her. Her hands met resistance. Not wood, not paint, but something organic, alive. Sarah realized she was no longer just trapped. She was hunted. Shadows lunged from the walls, slithering around her ankles, pulling at her hair, whispering fragments of past students. We were foolish too. Curiosity is punished. The dormitory chooses. One shadow formed into a tall figure, pale and thin, its face twisted into a mask of horror. It spoke in a voice that was many voices, layered, ancient. You cannot leave. We are endless. You are ours. Sarah screamed, pounding at the walls, trying to run. Doors opened and closed in impossible patterns. The ceilings warped. Lights flickered, and she stumbled into a hallway that now seemed to stretch into infinity. Each step brought another shadow closer, whispering her fears back to her. Her own reflection stepped from the mirror, reaching for her, speaking her thoughts aloud. The dormitory had become a living entity, bending reality around her, feeding on her terror. Sarah's sanity shattered. She collapsed to her knees in the hallway. The whispers overlapped, voices of every student the dormitory had ever claimed. Shadows coiled around her like serpents. Mirrors reflected her in endless iterations, each version screaming silently. She tried to speak, but her voice was gone. The dormitory had swallowed it. Her heart pounded. Sweat ran down her face. She realized the dormitory did not just punish curiosity. It consumed it. It consumed the living and left hollow reflections in their place. She clawed at a mirror, screaming silently. Her reflection smiled back, showing her twisted, hollow-eyed self. Then the reflection whispered, "We've been waiting." The walls closed in further. Doors disappeared, staircases twisted. The shadows pressed closer. There was no escape, no logic, no mercy. Hours, or maybe seconds, passed. Sarah stumbled forward blindly as the dormitory seemed to breathe around her. Light flickered, shadows danced, and whispers pierced her mind. Every corridor she turned into became the same corridor. Every mirror reflected a different horror. She screamed, and the shadows echoed it back at her, distorting her voice into something inhuman. She fell to the floor, clutching her head. Her body shook, reality collapsing. She understood now. The dormitory had no master. It was eternal. It was inevitable, and she was a part of it. The last thing Sarah saw before everything went black was herself, standing in the hallway, staring through the mirror. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Shadows slithered across the floor, over the walls, wrapping around her. The dormitory had claimed her. The whispers receded into silence, but the hallway was still alive, waiting. Waiting for the next student. Waiting for the next scream. Waiting for the next reflection to answer. The dormitory exhaled, and somewhere in the darkness, Sarah's reflection smiled. Morning light filtered weakly through the dormitory windows, but it offered no comfort. The third floor, once filled with the echoes of terror, now appeared calm and normal. The hallway stretched in perfect symmetry. Doors hung straight. Mirrors reflected empty, sunlit rooms, yet the silence was unnatural. It pressed against the ears like a weight, dense and suffocating. Sarah was gone, or at least, the Sarah who had entered the third floor no longer existed. The dormitory had claimed her. Lila stumbled into the hallway, her hair disheveled, eyes wide and hollow. She had slept through the night on the second floor, avoiding the third entirely. She glanced at the stairwell, where faint shadows moved unnaturally, curling in the corners of her vision. A janitor swept the corridor silently, avoiding the mirrors. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he whispered under his breath, "They always leave pieces behind. Memories, voices, reflections." A few students had survived the ordeal. Some were sick with fear, trembling at the faintest noise. Others whispered fragmented accounts of the shadows, the corridors, the mirrors. One sophomore, Tommy, claimed he had heard Sarah calling his name late into the night. Though she had been locked in the third floor for hours, he spoke in a barely audible voice. I don't know if she's still there. In the mirrors, maybe in the walls. No one could verify it. The dormitory appeared normal to outsiders, and yet the survivors carried something intangible, a hollow emptiness, as if part of them had been left behind in the building. Time passed. Life continued. Classes, meals, the mundane rhythm of student life went on, but the dormitory remained a patient predator, silent, breathing, waiting. A freshman moved in a week later, unaware, excited. The building's walls shifted subtly. Shadows stretched longer than they should. A faint whisper followed her up the stairs. "Welcome. We've been waiting." No one noticed. The dormitory had claimed another soul, silently, methodically, as it had for decades. In the empty corners of the dormitory, Sarah lingered. Not as she had been, but as a shadow of herself. Reflections in the mirrors showed her face, pale and twisted, eyes hollow, lips moving silently. She could not speak, could not leave. The dormitory had woven her into its very walls. Occasionally, she saw students in her mirror, their expressions fearful, unaware. She reached out from the reflection, stretching her hand toward them, but they could not see, could not hear. She was trapped, eternal, part of the dormitory's memory, waiting for the next unwary student. Even in the daylight, when everything appeared calm and orderly, a faint metallic scent lingered. Whispers drifted along hallways when no one was there. Mirrors reflected more than just reality. Shadows moved slightly, just beyond the eye's comfort. The building exhaled. The dormitory remembered, and it waited. A note appeared on the door of the next freshman. Jagged handwriting, the same as the one Sarah had found weeks ago. "You shouldn't have come here. Welcome back. We've been waiting." No one saw who left it. No one questioned it. But in the mirror of the hallway, if you looked closely, you could see a faint reflection, not of yourself, but of a girl with hollow eyes, pale and trembling. Her lips moved silently, whispering your name, waiting for the cycle to begin again. The dormitory was patient. It was eternal, and it had won once more.